So this morning, this podcast comes from my office instead of from the AMBO. So this is a first attempt, actually, at recording one of these from here. I wish I could have done this at the AMBO, but unfortunately, things did not work out for our recording at the 5 or the 7 a.m. Mass. So here we are in the office. Here we go. So this morning we hear St. Paul's famous treatise on love. They are iconic words that we hear. Love is patient, love is kind. They reach a summit when Paul says, love never fails. But is this our experience today? Many of the young today, and yes, even some of us who are more seasoned, there is a growing cynicism among us and a skepticism here. I mean, is love really forever? Pope St. John Paul II wrote extensively and beautifully on this subject of love and on the nature of love. In fact, in one of his works, Love and Responsibility, he points out that human beings have the capacity to see in another person a somebody with a heart and mind and desires to be known and to be loved, just as we do. We also, as human beings, have the capacity to know that all of us have something eternal and of immense value in us, such that before God formed you in the womb, he knew you. We have eternal souls, therefore. We are made in the image and likeness of God. Love, if it is truly love, will go to great lengths to see this and to uphold these divine and eternal realities in ourselves and in the other person who is the object of our love. So, for example, a person who loves another will never treat that other person as a mere object. No, rather, a person who loves will always see that other person as a someone of great value, with an eternal soul and having the divine image and a heart that is made for love. Pope St. John Paul II, therefore, notes that the opposite of love is not anger, as odd as that sounds, for anger may be revealing that a love has been hurt, at which point love may still be there. Yes, it is possible to love a person and to be angry at them at the same time. We know this as parents and even spouses. We love the kids even when they're annoying. The opposite of love, therefore, is not anger. The opposite of love is use. Let me repeat that. The opposite of love is use. To turn a person into an object for my own gratification and satisfaction. To forget that they are a somebody who's with an eternal soul and beautiful and who has the capacity to love and to be loved. Therefore, to use a person forgets their dignity, and also when we use somebody, that undermines our own dignity, because we're not made to use people, but to love them. In sum, then, we can say that it is impossible to uphold a person's dignity and to empty that dignity at the same time. It is impossible to love a person and to use them at the same time. Now, if we understand this, we can extrapolate why the Church teaches many of the things she does concerning many of the hot-button issues of our day. Of course, we could list many here, but for our purposes, it is enough to say that there is disagreement out there about what the Church teaches, and often the disagreement is lobbed at us, usually by the appeal to the Golden Rule, and with the accusation that our teachings are not very loving. Now, the world's arguments seem convincing, since after all we do live in a post-Christian relativistic culture where the very word love has been hijacked to mean whatever we want it to mean. The Corinthians were doing the same thing during Paul's day and age. It's why Paul writes to them about the nature of love, to teach them the truth of love. So that's the crux of today's reading. What is the nature of love? Love, again, according to our culture, it would seem, is defined by the Golden Rule which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But what if you don't mind being used? What if do unto others as you would have them do unto you would involve use? What then? Surely we cannot say that love could exist in a world where everybody is just happy using everybody else, rationalizing it by the appeal to the golden rule. There's no love there. We can say then that the golden rule is not the definition of love, rather it presumes love. So Jesus then is going to have to come forward and provide the definition, which is exactly what he does. So he refines the golden rule even further when he says, love one another. And how? Love one another as I have loved you. So you see, it's not enough to treat others as you would want to be treated. We must treat others as Jesus loves us. To get at the nature of love, therefore, we must see how love himself, that is, Jesus, how he himself has loved us. How has he loved us? Well, when we nailed him to the cross, love did not brood over injury. Jesus did not brood over injury. He could have, but he didn't. He was forgiving. When we dismissed him and he had every right to get angry at us, well, Jesus, who is love, was not quick-tempered. When we sought our own interests and were inflated and pompous and rude, and we all have been, love in response was patient. He was kind. He bore all things, including the cross under which he fell 3 times. He was believing and hoping in all things, including our conversion. And as well he endured all things, even the loss of all of his friends who abandoned him. That's how much Jesus loves us. That is love defined, because Jesus is love. He is its definition, its personification. He is that love which never fails. We find then that love is a person. Okay, that's a little heady, I won't lie, but Paul translates this into our lives when he says, quote, when I was a child, I used to talk as a child, think as a child, reason as a child. I was selfish. I used people. I was inflated. I was rude and pompous. I thought I knew better than the church, and I brooded over injuries, and I sought my own interests, going so far as to even cast Jesus headlong over the hill in the name of what I thought was love. That's how perverse Paul's understanding of love was, and that's how irrational the people in the gospel was today. They would cast Jesus, who is love personified, love incarnate, that they would cast love over the brow of the hill, thinking that they were doing so in the name of love. Now, did Jesus condemn Paul? No, he loved him. Jesus, in fact, came to Paul and asked him why he was persecuting him. Jesus mercifully invited Paul to examine his life. And so Paul would then write in time, he would say, when I became a man, I put aside childish things. I put aside all of the envy and the selfishness and the use. When I started to love as Christ loved, I started to see that love carried with it responsibility. You see, it was not enough to promise love and then to treat another as something to use and to cast away. It was not enough to express vows and then to seek my own interests. It was not love to do things contrary to love, things contrary to Jesus and to his mystical body, the church. After all, love does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rather love rejoices in the truth. And this, therefore, is the truth about love. Love is a person, Jesus Christ, who is patient and kind, who rejoices in the truth, not over wrongdoing, and he does not brood over injury. For us to love, therefore, and to love in the truth of love, means to become another Christ. Only then will our love bear all things, and believe all things, hope all things, and endure all things. Only then will our love never fail. For Jesus Christ, who is love, never fails.